Good afternoon. Welcome. In my opening remarks, I'd like to briefly first review today's policy decision. I'll then turn next to the Federal Open Market Committee's quarterly economic projections, also being released today, and I'll place today's policy decision in the context of the committee's projections and the Federal Reserve's statutory mandate to foster maximum employment and price stability. I'll then be glad to take your questions. Throughout today's briefing, my goal will be to reflect the consensus of the committee while taking note of the diversity of views as appropriate. Of course, my remarks and interpretations are my own responsibility. In its policy statement released earlier today, the committee announced first that it is maintaining its existing policy of reinvesting principal payments from its securities holdings, and second, that it will complete its planned purchases of $600 billion of longer-term Treasury securities by the end of the current quarter. Of course, going forward, the committee will regularly review the size and composition of its securities holdings in light of incoming information and is prepared to adjust those holdings as needed to meet the Federal Reserve's mandate. The committee made no change today in the target range for the federal funds rate, which remains at 0 to 1/4%. The committee continues to anticipate that economic conditions, including low rates of resource utilization, subdued inflation trends, and stable inflation expectations, are likely to warrant exceptionally low levels for the federal funds rate for an extended period. In conjunction with today's meetings, FOMC participants submitted projections for economic growth, the unemployment rate, and the inflation rate for the years 2011 to 2013 and over the longer run. These projections are conditional on each participant's individual assessment of the appropriate path of monetary policy needed to best promote the committee's objectives. A table showing the projections has been distributed. I'm going to focus today on the central tendency projections, which exclude the 3 highest and 3 lowest projections for each variable in each year. I call your attention first to the committee's longer run projections, which represent participants' assessments of the rates to which economic growth, unemployment, and inflation will converge over time under appropriate monetary policy and assuming no further shocks to the economy. As the table shows, the longer-run projections for output growth have a central tendency of 2.5 to 2.8%, the same as in the January survey. The longer-run projections for the unemployment rate have a central tendency of 5.2 to 5.6%, somewhat narrower than in January. These figures may be interpreted as participants' current estimates of the economy's normal or trend rate of growth and its normal unemployment rate over the longer run, respectively. The economy's longer-term rate of growth and unemployment are determined largely by non-monetary factors, such as the rate of growth of the labor force and the speed of technological change. And it should be noted that estimates of these rates are inherently uncertain and subject to revision over time. The central tendency of the longer-run projection for inflation, as measured by the price index for personal consumption expenditures, is 1.7 to 2.0%. In contrast to economic growth and unemployment, the longer-run outlook for inflation is determined almost entirely by monetary policy. Consequently, and given that these projections are based on the assumption that monetary policy is appropriate, these longer-run projections can be interpreted as indicating the inflation rate that committee participants judge to be most consistent with the Federal Reserve's mandate to foster maximum employment and stable prices. At 1.7 to 2.0%, the mandate-consistent rate of inflation is greater than 0 for a number of reasons. Perhaps most important, attempting to maintain inflation at 0 would increase the risk of experiencing an extended bout of deflation or falling wages and prices, which in turn could lead employment to fall below its maximum sustainable level for a protracted period. Hence, the goal of literally 0 inflation is not consistent with the Federal Reserve's dual mandate. Indeed, most central banks around the world aim to set inflation above 0, usually at about 2%. I turn now to the committee's economic outlook. As indicated in today's policy statement, the committee